Episode 7 starts with more flashbacks, as we see Jillian pushing her research at Fort Smith into dangerous territory. However, it's Birdie who manages to find the breakthrough, as she discovers a heartbeat in one of the unfertilized eggs. She's the only one who carries on research and developing while everyone else parties outside. This ultimately leads to a big chain of events that ends with Richard taking care of Gus and busting him out of the compound. This time though, we see things from Birdie's perspective, as she breaks back into the lab, evading guards and grabbing as much gear as she can. She watches Richard leave with Gus, promising to find him. These words play over and over again in her mind like a heartbeat, like Gus' first heartbeat, as she remains determined to find him. The microbe that she and Judy were working on has been broken out, which the latter confirms while ringing in a secure area. She's worried that this is the end, while Birdie opens a locker, finds the envelope to Yellowstone and decides they need to start packing. Unfortunately, Birdie is caught before that and taken away by several guards who show up at the door. Back in the present, the bus drives through the wreckage of numerous flaming cars, all brought about thanks to Dolly and her troops. Unfortunately, they're ambushed by the Last Men tank. As we soon find out, all of this is the Animal Army, who show up like knights in shining armor on motorbikes. They're led by Becky once more, but this time she works hand in hand with Tiger. As for the tank, it's being controlled by Rufus and Bobby. Bobby shows his face and declares, "Bobby, I'm back. Yes, Bobby, go on, my son." This alliance is finally secured, as Becky allows Tiger to lead the Animal Army against the Last Men, while Becky joins the bus full of kids. After a brief pit stop, Jep speaks to Amy outside, who walks away from them all. She tells Jep that she'll be right behind them. As she raises a cloth to her mouth, she points out that she's infected. Now, one could deduce this is because of her being in the lab, but we'll have to wait and see. Amy doesn't want the kids to know right now, clinging to the notion of letting their road trip be fun and to make it to the cabin before it's too late. When night turns to day, the group make it to Yellowstone and hold up at Gus' cabin. With a much slower pace now and bits of humor seeping in, everything has a bittersweet tinge to it given that Amy is infected and could pass soon. As for Gus, Jep heads in to see him and hands over the cassette tape that Becky had. This happens to be more context over what happened in the past, including how the pandemic started with hubris rather than bats. Jillian happens to be patient zero. She infected herself to try and progress science, but in doing so, she basically doomed the world. She goes on to mention her grandfather, Captain James Thacker, and how he led an expedition up in Alaska. He also had a rare degenerative disease and sailed off in search of the fountain of youth that could cure him. Jillian has been searching for this too, and believes Gus is their solution to shut this Pandora's box and save everyone. Birdie allows Richard to live a life with Gus and try to keep him safe, and it explains why she never came looking for him. She actually went off to Alaska to continue James' research and find a cure to all of this. Unfortunately, General Abbott is not done with the kids just yet, and he manages to capture Tiger and her Animal Army brethren, determined to find the cabin and all the kids, who are shacked up in Yellowstone. Gus has set his sights on Alaska though, wanting to try and find Birdie. Jep convinces him not to, telling him she'd want him to be here, safe, in the cabin. All the kids are going to need them now, especially as Amy's time is coming to an end. In the middle of the night, Jep hears the sound of someone heading off into the woods. It's Gus, and he's gone all the way to the perimeter fence. The pair sit together and marvel at the sky as the northern lights appear. Anyway, that's not the most important thing here. The biggest issue comes from Abbott, who's ready for his final crusade against Gus and the others. Tiger manages to escape in enough time to warn them all, but she's also exhausted, cut up and bruised. Abbott has retaken the zoom, and next, he's going after Yellowstone. Episode 8 starts with Addy angry and realizing he's been left on his own. With Ronnie gone, Addy instead heads into the Purple Flower Room, removes his glasses and decides to inhale deeply, letting the hallucinations consume him, passing out into a stupor. The visions are pretty extreme and include a familiar icy lake. When he awakens, Addy finds the glass has been shattered and the amp are still in his pocket. Meanwhile, Becky comforts Tiger, who's still torn up over what's happened. Johnny too is similarly shocked as he's summoned by General Abbott. He looks around the devastation in the zoo before heading up into Ronnie's room. Leaving his gun behind, he takes his stuff and looks set to leave until Abbott arrives and stops him. "We never leave family behind," Abbott growls before handing over his gun and letting him lead the way. There's no escaping from Abbott now. In Yellowstone, Amy speaks to the kids and reminds them that Abbott is not going to stop. He's going to come for them, and Tiger's warning has given them the slight upper hand. Jep urges Gus to stay safe, but similarly that they'll stay together, while Becky offers some encouraging words of wisdom to Amy, thanking her for keeping the kids safe. With Becky's army gone, Her maternal instincts kick in, as she's tasked with watching over the kids and keeping them safe. All the kids say goodbye to Amy in a rather emotional moment before parting ways, as the rest left behind prepare for Abbott's arrival. Above Yellowstone, as the helicopter hovers closer toward the final conflict, Abbott has his brother sing to him. During this beautiful song, we cut across to those left behind at the cabin, as they prepare booby traps and thick black smoke to draw Abbott into their location. Becky leads the kids out to a gondola, which they ride to safety. It can only take a few kids at a time though, and with Abbott fast approaching, time is very much of the essence. The general sees the smoke and rallies the troops, who are already waiting. They knock down the fence and prepare to strike, until Johnny turns on Abbott and holds him at gunpoint. Johnny points out there's not a cure, given Addie failed, and their fighting is futile. He's given up and decides the general should let the kids and him go. It's over. Everyone can see that except you, Johnny says. As for Abbott, he's stubborn and only cares about winning. Abbott eventually decides to let his brother go, but as he salutes and turns his back, Abbott shoots Johnny dead. As they head into the compound, Jep wastes little time beginning to take the guards out, while Gus and Amy similarly work to blindside the last men. In fact, the group take out 8 men in quick succession, and with the first wave done, Abbott picks up a handgun as he heads through the devastation, and then finds himself before Jep. The latter knocks down General Abbott and leaves him a bit of mess. However, Wendy leaves the gondola just as it's about to leave the station and hurries back into the woods, while Jep is manhandling Abbott. He points out that Jep's wife and child died while waiting for him to return home. Whether Abbott is telling the truth or not doesn't matter, as Abbott uses the opportunity to knock Jep down and leave. Over at the cabin, it's time for Plan B, and that comes from Gus being kept safe and hidden while Amy grabs her shotgun and confronts the general. However, she didn't account for Wendy still being out there. Thankfully, Becky shows up and saves her life, killing the guard and revealing the truth, that she's been looking for her sister all this time. Her sister, of course, being Wendy. Wendy is shocked and walks away, but as she does, Amy is blindsided by Abbott, who shows up at the cabin. He takes his attention off Amy when he learns she's sick, and it's enough for Amy to stab him in the neck and straddle him down. Unfortunately, it's not enough to kill him, and he grabs a shotgun and chases Gus, who frees himself from his hiding place and takes back the serum that Amy had. Thankfully, some Deus Ex Machina saves the day as Gus screams into the air for Abbott to stop, bringing forth a massive stampede that go full-on Mufasa death on the guy, trampling him to death. With the threat of the last men over, Amy rests easy with Wendy as the former discusses how she'll be joining the stars soon. She tells Wendy that if she feels lost in the future, she should look up and remember her. However, there's a twist in the tale here. In his defeated state, Abbott rises up enough to use his crossbow on Gus and shoot him in the back. With Gus fading out and struggling, we cut to all the kids together paying their respects to the fallen. It's Amy's funeral, and all the kids struggle to hold back tears as they say goodbye to their mom. So what of Gus? Well, he's still alive. Of course he is. He's not in a great way though, and he has a fever and is holding on. When he suddenly regains consciousness again, it occurs right off the back of a dream about Birdie. She asks for help, freezing in an Alaskan cave, and it seems like she's in trouble. The group gather around Gus and decide that they can go off and find her in Alaska and help save the world. With the last men story over, the tale of Gus is still very much prevalent and ready for a third season. As the episode closes out, Addie closes in on Gus as he learns he's heading up to Alaska. As for Zhang, she learns that Abbott is dead from her scout, who has similarly found Addie's recorder. She sends him off to get it translated, while she prepares to set her sights on becoming the next antagonist in this series. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope you enjoyed episodes of Sweet Tooth. Thanks for watching.